Hello everyone and welcome to the New Look Stews Music Quiz. Yes, new look because as you can see we've got a snazzy new design, but also because we're a little bit briefer and we've gone down to 30 questions and the answers are at the end of this video as well rather than a separate one, so you don't have to wait around to find out how well you did. Apart from that, format's the same. Cryptic clues, cryptic questions, testing your knowledge of a year. And this year we're on 1991. So without any further ado, let's get cracking on this. Starting us off with a trivia question. Yes, 1991 was the year of Bryan Adams being at #1 for 15 weeks. I'm not going to ask you about that. But who buzzed him off #1 in the UK after that record 15-week stint? Who relieved us of the pressure? The clue is there in the question for you. Okay, moving on to #2. And a reminder, of course, as well as we go through, feel free to pause any of these. This isn't a time limit quiz. You know, just if you need a bit more time, press your pause button, see how you get on. Iron Maiden began 1991 with their first UK #1. Actually, it lasted 2 weeks as well. But what was the song? The song that hit #1 for Iron Maiden at the beginning of the year. And another question here. Right, so on the 25th of September 1991, 4 classic albums released. Same day, 4 classic albums, right? 2 grunge classics, the 5th album from the Kings of Funk Rock, and the 2nd jazz-influenced album from an alternative hip-hop tribe. I'm not going to be that cruel and ask you to name all 4. I say if you can name 2 of those, you can have the point. If you can name 4, well, feel very good about yourself. But all I want is 2 of them. Okay, on to the album covers round, but a very specific question this time for you. First of all, whose debut album, released in 1991, was this? You see I've covered up any names there. Whose debut album, released in 1991, was this? Big band, you know, became something major. That's not one of them on the cover, by the way. Don't know who it is, to be honest. #5, another album cover. A massive group of the 80s made a comeback with this album. Who? Who made a comeback with this album? Big group of the late 70s, actually, and 80s. 6 years this was after their last album. And your last album cover one here. Here's an album cover. Who released 2 albums on the same day, both with a version of this cover? Who released 2 albums on the same day in 1991, both with versions of that cover? Okay, let's do some lyrics, shall we? Okay, I'm back into complete the lyrics here for you. But from major songs, I hopefully are going to be able to get have at least to go with this. Well, what would you do if my heart was torn in two? Something to show you feel that your love for me is real. What are those missing words? And yes, the asterisks do represent a letter each, so I've given you a little bit of help there. What would you do if my heart was torn in two? Something to show you feel that your love for me is real. #8. Now to complete the lyrics here. Now, Muriel plays piano every Friday at the Hollywood, and they brought me down to see her. And they asked me if I'd do a little number, and I sang with all my might. She said, "Tell me, are you a Christian child?" And I said, Very, very well-known song. Muriel plays the piano every Friday at the Hollywood, She said, "Tell me you're a Christian child." And I said, "What did I say?" Okay, and number 9 for you. Bit simpler. Exit light. Enter night. Take my hand. We're off to... Where are we off to? Exit light. Enter night. Take my hand. We're off to... Okay, number 10. We've got a few questions now. Back again. An awful lot of re-releases in 91 here. You just got to guess what the song was here that was re-released. It's a comedy song from a 79 film. It reached number 3 in 1991 on the back of Exposure from Simon Mayo's Breakfast Show. Had a bit of a habit of getting songs re-released. Which comedy song did he get to number 3? Number 11. A reissue of a 1982 song, which was reissued due to a Levi's advert, one of many, resulted in the only number 1 for a highly loved UK band. So what was the song? 1982 song, reissued because of a Levi's advert, became the only number 1 for a highly loved UK band. And the last fair back agains. What became the only song to reach the UK Christmas number 1 spot twice in 1991? What became, in 1991, the only song to reach the UK Christmas number 1 spot twice? How are you doing so far? Seems a good point to remind you that choice of year isn't random here. I work here in association with Richard Shaw and his Music from a Year quiz. Every week, Richard gives us a year. We go away, listen to loads and loads of albums from there, and come back with our favourites. And this week, we're beginning our new run through with by using 1991. You get your top 5 and name them from 1 down to 5, and then we find out on a Sunday what's the favourite of that year. It's great fun. Do enjoy it. Obviously, this hopefully gives you a load of ideas for albums to listen to. And here's one in particular. We're on to our cryptic albums. Okay, here's where basically you've got to look at the pictures. It's not quite a say what you see. Maybe it is. You've got to work out what I'm really referring to here. Here's 2 pictures. I don't think you need any introduction to the man on the left. On the right, we're concerned with the one in the yellow jersey, okay? Concerned with the one in the yellow jersey. Put them together, and what have you got? Number 14, another one. 3 images for you. Put them together, and you should get a high-quality album from 1991. And number 15, same thing, 2 pictures, put them together, and you should get a maybe not so quite so high quality album from 1991. Sorry if I've just insulted a favourite of yours there, but it's just of its time, really. But goodness me, weren't they popular in 91? Okay, so we're at the halfway point now. Time to move to a new departure for us here. This is going to be now the 5 biggest sellers of the year. I'm talking singles here in the UK. So the 5 biggest selling singles in the UK. All you've got to do is get what they are. Of course, I've been generous to you and I've given you some help here. Just some initials. First of all, the single and then the artist. They're in order there, 1 down to 5. You've just got to decode them. Like I say, Feel free to pause, take your time over this. I'm going to move on now to the next one. Sure, you'll get many of them if you think about it. We're on to the covers now. A few questions about covers in 1991. First one being, ask you to name the group who released their unofficial cover of Where the Streets Have No Name. Who released their unofficial cover of Where the Streets Have No Name? And number 22. Who loved to pastiche I Will Survive? No, it's covers-ish, it's not an official cover. But who loved to, it's a pastiche. Who loved to pastiche I Will Survive? And another covers one here. Which UK comedian reached #1 in the UK, this is, of course, with a cover of a 1968 Tommy Rose song? Who is that? Okay, so on we go to our Name That Tune round. Now, those of you who don't remember this or have not joined in before, for those of you there, what I'm about to do, I'm partly due to the wonderful restrictions placed on copyright and the use of music, means I can't play you bits of music, original and do any kind of music spotting there. So my solution is that I'm going to play it to you. The only catch being I'm not a very good piano player, so that gets in the way a little bit. So we got 3 tunes coming up for you. And the first one is an intro. You got to name that tune from this intro. There you go. Massive song of 91. How'd you get on with that? I'm not going to tempt fate by attempting to play it again. Instead, I'm going to move on to 25 for you. Here, I'm playing the main part of the tune. See if you can spot this 91 classic. There you are. Notice I'm being very friendly to you here, and I don't ask you necessarily to name the artist for me, just the name of the song. That's what you need to do here. Right, here's your last one for this week. Again, I'm going for a snippet of the tune, big 91 song. Can you remember it and identify it from my bad piano playing? That's pretty short, isn't it? I'll give you it one more time there. There you go. 3 classics of 91. Name that tune for me. We're nearing the end now. A run of a few more trivia questions for you here to finish with. 91 was the year of Madonna's concert film called Truth or Dare, or for some reason renamed In Bed with Madonna in the UK. Wasn't that exciting? But who did she reveal famously was the love of her life in the famous Truth or Dare game that took place? Who did she reveal was the love of her life? Number 28. Early on in 91, whose performance of the Star Spangled Banner at the Super Bowl was so popular it was released as a single in the US and did very well as well? Whose performance of the Star Spangled Banner at the Super Bowl was so popular it was released as a single in the US? So we're not talking about the halftime show here. We're talking about the pre-game performance of the Star Spangled Banner. It's most definitely the most famous performance of it. Number 29. Which group hit the top 10 with their debut single, which sampled a 1970s BBC public information film warning children to say no to strangers? Which group hit the top 10 with their debut single, which sampled a 1970s BBC public information film warning children to say no to strangers? And number 30. Whose penis grabbed the public's attention on the cover of his band's comeback album? Oh, wasn't the front cover, but whose penis grabbed the public's attention on the cover of his band's comeback album? Well, there you go. There's our 30 for you. How well have you done? Well, stick with us and we'll find out, because here come the answers. Okay, straight on for you. Check them out. Give yourself a tick. I'll let you know what you needed to get the answer. Let's start with those first trivia questions. Right. So our first question was about who succeeded Bryan Adams at number 1 after all those 15 weeks. Who buzzed him off the top? Yes, well, that was, of course, because of The Fly. It was The Fly by U2. U2's second number 1 after Desire from a few years ago. Came straight in. Great song as well. What a song that is. People always mock U2 for, well, Bono particularly, for wearing his sunglasses, which started at this point. But according to him, it's nothing to do with trying to look good or anything like that. It's glaucoma. That's why he wears them all the time, apparently. This, of course, was U2's comeback, wasn't it? After Rattle and Hum, the film and the album had been mocked a little bit for being a bit pretentious. So they went away, nearly broke up. I remember listening to them do a concert on the turn of New Year's Eve, turning into the 90s, and them saying that we got to go away and dream it all up again. And who knew if they're coming back? And they did. Of course, it was recorded mostly in Berlin at the Hansa Studios, which famously Bowie and Iggy Pop recorded their legendary classic song. So there we are, The Fly. And what about the second question? Iron Maiden's first number 1? That, of course, was Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter. Yes. Remember a very good joke from the Mary Whitehouse Experience about that song. The original version of the song was recorded just by Bruce Dickinson, apparently, for his album. But Maiden loved it and decided it suited them a bit more. That original version apparently won a Golden Raspberry for Worst Original Song in '89. And you can find that original version on the Best of Bruce Dickinson, apparently, if you're interested in that. But I think the Maiden one was a little bit heavier, shall we say. The arrangement's very similar, but Maiden go for it a bit more. That's what Dickinson himself said. They originally wanted to release this as a single on Christmas Eve, apparently, because they wanted to scare the day, according to them, to scare the daylights out of Cliff Richard. So it was unfortunately officially released a week after Christmas, so it didn't challenge him, but did go straight in at number 1, despite being banned by the BBC, who refused to play the song on Radio 1. And actually would only play I think a 30-second or minute-long clip on Top of the Pops, and it was number 1 as well. There we go. The 4 albums that were recorded on the 25th of September 91. Look at this for a collection on one day. Nevermind, Bad Motorfinger by Soundgarden, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, and The Low End Theory. Now remember, you only needed to get 2 of those. If you only got 1, I will give you a half for that. But you only need to get 2 of those to get the full mark. If you got all 4, well done. Very impressive indeed there. But what a day. What a day for music that was. We should hold an anniversary this coming year, shouldn't we? 30 years since that day when we get to the 25th of September. Right, album covers. We started with the debut album of Blur. That's who that was there. Leisure by Blur. Did get a top 10 single with There's No Other Way. But apart from that, apparently Damon Albarn completely disowns that album, thinks it's awful. I prefer it to Modern Life is Rubbish, to be honest with you, but there you are. The comeback album, easily overlooked. It was Dire Straits with On Every Street. Yeah, they came back. They did one more album after Brothers in Arms. I mean, there was only 2 original members left by this time, and it was pretty, much disappeared without trace, really. It's not that bad, though. Maybe I'm just sounding like an old man there. The 2 albums on the same day, I'm sure many of you got, of course, was Guns N' Roses' Use Your Illusion albums. 2 became the most popular one. I prefer 1 myself. But then they set off on a 2-year long tour for Use Your Illusion after that. I want to see that tour, actually, but there you are. Okay, and then as soon as they started, within about a month, Izzy Stradlin left the band. And there was never going to be the same again after that. Right, the lyrics. Did you get this? Some of you will remember this better than with more affection than others, shall we say. At the time, people went on about it a lot more, didn't we? What would you do if my heart was torn in two? This is more than words. More than words. Kept off #1 by Bryan Adams, obviously, as many, many things were. Extreme apparently began to hate this song. Comes from their 1990 album Pornograffiti. It was about a third a single, I think, because they got so well known for it. And of course, there's not really anything to do with most of the rest of what they do. There's a story. Apparently, they went on tour supporting Aerosmith, and I think it was in Poland. They refused to play it. Stopped playing it. Decided this is the time. We're not going to play it anymore. Only to find that next day when they arrived, Steven Tyler had written on their dressing room door in big letters, "Play the effing song." There you are, getting trapped by your one hit. What about this one? Did you get this one? Muriel and her playing the piano every Friday at Hollywood. It's that bit at the end here, isn't it? She said, "Tell me, are you a Christian child?" And I said, "Ma'am, I am tonight." This is Walking in Memphis. Walking in Memphis from Mark Cohn, the original. Obviously shared as a cover a few years later after that. He claims it was 100% autobiographical. He went to, on this visit to Memphis, went to Reverend Al Green's church. That is the Al Green, who's now Reverend there. And then went off to this place called the Hollywood Cafe, which is what this bit's about, where you end up on stage with Muriel, a local school teacher, who performed there. And they didn't know any songs in common, really. So ended up singing Amazing Grace. Oh, there you go. That's Mark Cohn's debut album. You can see there, I think, self-titled, if you so wish to investigate further. Quite a different song, this one, isn't it? Exit Light, Enter Night, Take My Hand, because we're off to Never Never Land. This is Metallica's, well, known as the Black Album, isn't it? But it's just really called Metallica. That sent them stratospheric into the world of being described as the world's biggest band. This Hetfield himself, when he wrote Enter Sandman, apparently thought it sounded catchy and kind of commercial. Well, you listen to it yourself and see if you agree. And so to counterbalance that sound, he wrote lyrics about destroying the perfect family. A huge, horrible secret of family, even with references to crib death in there. I gather the rest of the band weren't that pleased, and for the only time suggested that he maybe ought to look at those lyrics again. Well, there we are. Back again. The 1979 comedy song revived by Simon Mayo was, of course, Always Look on the Bright Side of Life, which got to #3. Apparently the most popular song requested for funerals. Ha, 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 ha. Next question. The Levi's commercial in this year sent Should I Stay or Should I Go to #1. Remember that Paul Hall commercial with the guy hustling? Of course, because he had his Levi's. There you go. Not only was it the Clash's only #1, it was the Clash's only top 10 hit, in fact. Another one written by Mick Jones, apparently about his role in the band. He was soon to be, of course, sacked from the band that he started. and put together. A bit sad, really, isn't it? Anyway, next question. What was the only song to reach Christmas #1 twice? It was Bohemian Rhapsody, released, of course, after the death of Freddie Mercury. Had a total, I think, of 14 weeks at #1 in the end over its 2 spouts. It's now one of the highest selling singles of all time. Right, what about this cryptic album cover? Trump, and who's that on the right? That is Greg LeMond, the American winner of the Tour de France, who was not stripped of his title for drugs. How's it together? It's Trump LeMond. It's the Pixies. Yes, Trump LeMond. The Pixies. Well, last album of this incarnation of them before they split up and went their own ways. Came back obviously much later. Cracking album though, almost a Black Francis solo album. There's not much Kim Deal on there, really, is there? What about this one? Who's down on the left? That's Dr. Fox. The girl in the middle is irrelevant. It's the bass that's important. And those of you know your Greek, that's alpha. That's a small alpha, because this is St. Etienne's wonderful Fox bass alpha, their greatest album, best known album, certainly. How hard you get that one? Well, if you didn't, surely you got this one. If you don't, I blame you for not knowing that man on the right. That is one of the greatest composers of all time. It is not Beethoven. It is Franz Schubert. Wonderful, wonderful composer. Brilliant music. And then there's a dip next to it. Do you remember EMF? You must remember it. They were unbelievable, of course. And that was their album of the year, Schubert Dip. It was huge. They were huge, weren't they? They're never forgotten. Okay. These 5 biggest sellers, did you get them? You must have got the first one. Of course, that's Everything I Do It For You by Bryan Adams. What about BR by Q? Well, we've just been talking about it. Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. The third one's going to drive you mad if you didn't get it. It looks completely strange, but it was the Shoop Shoop song. It's in His Kiss by Cher. Remember that? God, that was annoying, wasn't it? Anyway, what about the next one? I'm Too Sexy for My Shirt. Right Said Fred. Yes, that was this year, 4th biggest selling single. Now, this is the hard one. DTB by TS. It was Do the Bartman by The Simpsons. Remember? Simpsons having just exploded big, mostly in America. But how did they get to #1 here? Hardly anyone was watching them. They were only on Sky at the time, and no one had Sky, really. Well, there you go. 5 songs there, 16 to 20, so a mark for each one of those you got right. Let's move on to the covers. Who covered Where the Streets Have No Name? It was, of course, the Pet Shop Boys. It wasn't an homage. It wasn't anything nice. They hate U2. I've just been reading, actually, the book Pet Shop Boys. It's called Literally, about their tour in '89. And my goodness, they slag off the U2 tour. But to be honest, they slag off a lot of people. It's a bit harsh, really. And I've always thought they're a little bit hypocritical doing this, because the point of their cover wasn't it, that it went from Where the Streets Have No Name into Is It Can't Take My Eyes Off You, I think, claiming that there's similarity, to try and show the similarities between them. But a few years earlier, remember this, Jonathan King, not that we want to defend him in any way, Jonathan King pointed out that It's a Sin was very, very similar in many ways to Wild World by Cat Stevens, and proved it by recording a version of Wild World in the style of It's a Sin, and they sued him. Made him take it all back. And then they went and did the same thing themselves. Famously, when quizzed about what he thought of it, Bono just said, what have I done to deserve this? There you go. I know lots of you out there hate Bono. I don't. Right, whose pastiche of I Will Survive is the best way of putting it. It was Erasure with their song Love to Hate You. And if you remember it, listen to it, and you think, hang on, this is I Will Survive, isn't it? It's even got the same bit in the middle of it. Anyway, I'm sure it was just a loving pastiche. The cover of the '68 Tommy Rose song by UK comedian, it was Vic Reeves, of course, got a #1 with it, with the Wonder Stuff backing him up. And Bob Mortimer, he was in the background somewhere, wasn't he, as well? What about my piano playing? What did you make of that? Well, 24 was the intro to Shiny Happy People by REM. Of course, they went stratospheric this year, didn't they? Came into the mainstream with Out of Time. I'm not an REM fan, which is probably why I like Out of Time, most of their albums. But REM fans tend to find it's one of their least favourites, I think, but never mind. Number 25 was Now That We Found Love by Heavy D and the Boys. Remember, you only needed to get the title of the tune. So only Now That We Found Love. But in there, I think it was using an old OJ's song, that one. If you really like a bit of Heavy D and the Boys, there's their album, Peaceful Journey. I haven't listened to it myself. 26, Sunshine on a Rainy Day by Zoe. Hopefully you recognise that. There's her album as well at the time, but she didn't really do anything else, did she, poor old Zoe, after that? It was a real one-hit wonder, wasn't she? Okay, on to our last selection of trivia. See how we've got to. Have you made it over half marks? Have you made it to 20? Have you made it to the magical 25? Sean Penn was Madonna's love of her life, according to her Truth or Dare performance in the film. Of course, she'd been married to him. I remember seeing the film, but I don't remember anything else apart from that. And I remember them laughing at Kevin Costner a bit. But there you go. The Star Spangled Banner at the Super Bowl was performed by Whitney Houston. If you've not heard it, listen to it. It's not just brilliant, but it's clever, because somewhere along the line, she kind of made it very clearly about black rights in America. Just so clever. And it was a very difficult time, of course, because this was the Gulf War was going, so it was a very difficult situation. Whose debut single used that government information film? Of course, it was The Prodigy and Charlie. Remember Charlie? Charlie says, well, if you're old enough, you'll remember it. Charlie and the Cat, worth looking up, and they used it, and it was the beginning of The Prodigy for us. And the final question, whose penis shocked everybody? We're back to U2 again. They've been everywhere this year, haven't we? It's Adam Clayton. No idea why, but his penis appeared on the cover of, I think it was the inside cover actually of Achtung Baby. Achtung Baby's a great album though. I hope you've done all right there, and I hope you've enjoyed that. Do let me know if you like the new one, if you like the 30, if you're okay with the answers coming at the end of it rather than anything else. Let me know how much you got as well. I love to know how people are getting on. Really works well. But most importantly of all, remember, the reason I'm doing this is for charity. Okay? All the way along, down the bottom there has been my Just Giving address. I'm raising money for Young Minds UK. That's what this is all about. And if you can go on and give anything, that would be great. I've had some wonderful viewing figures for these quizzes. But it'd be lovely to get a little bit of money in. I know we're all a bit short at the moment, but whatever you can give would be great, because that's why I'm doing this. Okay. And also, please subscribe as well to my YouTube channel. The more I get, the more notice I get, the more people will take part in this. Thank you very much for listening and taking part. And yeah, new quiz next week. Hope to see you then.